We're going to speak to Maura Finkelstein, who is a tenured Jewish professor of anthropology at Muhlenberg College, and she's been fired basically over an Instagram repost about Zionism. And she is a writer, ethnographer, and associate professor of anthropology up until very recently. She's the author of The Archive of Loss, Lively Ruination in Mill Land, Mumbai, published by Duke University Press in 2019. Her writing has also been published in Anthropological Quarterly, City and Society, Cultural Anthropology, Anthropology Now, Electric Literature, Allegra Lab, more places. And she was nominated for a pushcart. She's also written for the Scottish Left Review, Mondo Weiss, and Al Jazeera. She was a finalist for the Witness Literary Award and was a Tin House Scholar, and was recently the recipient of the 2024 New Directions Award from the General Anthropology Division of the American Anthropological Association. So welcome, Maura.
Hi, it's so nice to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for talking to us. And I'm really excited to be talking to you. This story is really important. I did see you talk to Mark Lamontail, friend of show Mark Lamontail, but it really needs to get a lot more attention. And there was a great piece on it that Natasha Leonard did at The Intercept. But for people who are just tuning in, and because this hasn't gotten the exposure it deserves, honestly, tell us what happened to you.
I want to start by saying that this is in the landscape of a lot of faculty, staff, and students at colleges and universities across the US and the world over the past year who have been silenced, suspended, fired in some capacity. And a lot of those stories will never come to light because they're contingent faculty members. They don't have the institutional support of tenure. And so my story is a little weird because I'm supposed to be protected because I'm a tenured professor. So essentially what happened was that over the fall semester, things that I was teaching, the context of Palestine, and things that I was publishing, particularly in an essay in which I said never again means never again for anyone, speaking as an anti-Zionist Jew. The administration at my college found themselves very pressured by students, donors, alumni, most of whom were connected through Hillel International, who put a lot of pressure on the college to fire me because.
And can you, sorry, before you're moving on, just can you explain in like a sentence what Hillel is for viewers?
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that because there's a lot of misconceptions around what Hillel International is. From about 1923 to the early 2000s, Hillel International could be said to be the center for Jewish life on campus. But over the past 20 years, because of Zionist donors and because of its connections to AIPAC, Hillel International has actually become an Israeli outpost in the United States on college campuses and universities. So it's really important that people understand that when Hillel is criticized, it's criticized because it is an explicitly Zionist institution that does everything from sending students to Israel to be connected with the Israeli army, to participate in Hasbara fellowships in which they learn how to come back and be warriors for Israel on campus, to hosting Israel fellows who are former Israeli soldiers who come to college campuses and are sort of a pipeline to getting American Jewish students to move to Israel to join the army, et cetera. So Hillel, they explicitly say that they are a Zionist institution and Israel is at the heart of their work. So it's really important that people understand that Hillel is not a space for Jewish life. It's a space for Zionist indoctrination on college and university campuses. So thank you for letting me clarify that. Yeah. That was sort of where a lot of the pressure on the college was coming from. And we live in a neoliberal world in which, as colleges and universities are defunded in terms of federal support, they rely more and more on private donors. And so my college is just, one of hundreds and hundreds of colleges that needs tuition and big donors in order to function. And so getting pressure from those stakeholders to fire a professor should not be a big deal, but it is, especially at a small college like mine. And so during the fall semester, there were various investigations into what I was teaching and what I was publishing, and this sort of pesky academic freedom idea that we can talk more about whether that's a real thing, sort of protected me, sort of didn't. But essentially what happened is that in mid-January, a student that I had never met, did not know, had never taught, had never encountered, but who had been sort of keeping an eye on my social media feed for quite some time now, filed a complaint against me through the equal opportunity non-discrimination policy, which is something that people might know from like employment law. It means that you cannot be fired based on your race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexuality, etc. There are all of these protected classes. And this student made the argument that the student identified as a Zionist and that I posted something that was critical of Zionism. And since the student believed that Zionism and Judaism were the same, that I was denying the student access to an education, because if I was going to critique Zionism, that student would not feel safe taking my class. And when I first heard the complaint, I actually thought it was a joke. It was sort of hard to take it seriously, but that single complaint based on a single social media post, which I believe you've seen, um, led to a 4-month investigation in which I was found by a committee appointed by the Title IX office that handles Title VI, so civil rights issues, and the provost, that I had been found responsible for 4 counts of harassment, online harassment, discrimination, and online discrimination, and was recommended to be terminated.
You were basically accused of discrimination based on shared ancestry. They're considering Zionism to be shared ancestry, which of course is ironically an anti-Semitic trope, right? To conflate being a Zionist with being Jewish. And the people who do that are, like the KKK and really overt, vile racists will, and anti-Semites use the term Zionist and Jew interchangeably, like the Zionist this, the Jewish that, whatever. And then the other people who do that are like Israel Defenders and APAC and the ADL.
Right.
So
Exactly.
yeah,
And it's interesting when those two sides are actually on the same side, we should be
right.
very concerned.
Yeah, it's a sign that something is up. Yeah, exactly. The Department of Education about this investigation actually said that you created a potential hostile environment for Jewish students. And again, this was based on repeated reports in a single semester regarding a professor's classroom statements and social media posts that created a potential hostile environment for Jewish students. And the argument was that your conduct had enough of an impact on students' ability to engage in college activities. So, what is your response to that?
I think so. There's two different things that are at play here with the OCR Department of Education complaint. For folks who were paying attention, there were over 100 similar complaints made against colleges and universities across the country. And the interesting thing about the OCR complaint is that you do not have to actually be associated with the college or university in order to make those complaints. So it's not clear from, I mean, I have my own speculation. It's not clear from the report who was making these complaints, whether they had ever taken my classes, whether they were students of mine or not. In the end, the OCR report sort of concluded, in terms of my understanding, that the college had done what they needed to do and, move on. I was never contacted. So I was alerted by my college on January 17th that a complaint had been filed. And then the next week, the internal investigation began. And I didn't hear about the OCR report again until it was published very, very recently. So, in terms of that actual investigation, I don't know who was conducting it. I don't know who was spoken to. But my understanding of it is that not only is it separate from what was happening at my college, but I was not found. The report is not going to make any suggestions in terms of how the college should handle these things. But as far as I understand from reading the report, they did their due diligence and did not find anything that would be drastic enough to take the kinds of measures that my college ended up taking.
So let's take a look at this tweet, which is, I guess, there was a lot of pressure against you and criticism of you, but it seems like the thing that really pushed you over the edge, kind of, or pushed you past the line where they were going to fire you, is a tweet that you shared on Instagram, like, and it's an Instagram story. Okay, so this is Remy Kanazi, who tweeted, "Do not coward to Zionists. Shame them. Do not welcome them in your spaces. Do not make them feel comfortable. Why should those genocide-loving fascists be treated any different than any other flat-out racist? Don't normalize Zionism. Don't normalize Zionists taking up space." And then he says, "These scum of the earth genocide fans are getting Palestinians fired from their jobs. They are targeting anyone speaking up on Palestine. Don't make them feel comfortable. Don't empower their McCarthyism and hate campaigns. They are racist and have no business near progressive spaces." Which is ironic because he says they're McCarthyite, and then look what happens. But
Yeah.
you get smeared and basically fired over this. How do you see that call that's being made there that you echoed? What does that mean to you, and what would that have meant as a professor?
I think it's really important. And, part of the work that I've been trying to do for decades now is to, read Palestinian scholars, read Palestinian writers, listen to Palestinian voices in order to help myself understand how we live in a very Zionist country. I, know it or not, I have been indoctrinated in the ways that, we're all indoctrinated to white supremacy and sexism and, homophobia, et cetera, racism. Um, and so I've worked really hard over the past few decades to unlearn a lot of the things that sort of were in the ether as I was growing up. And in terms of advocating for Palestinian liberation. And I don't think that that project is possible unless we're simultaneously calling out Zionism as a white supremacist settler colonial ideology, right? Like, Israel as a settler state has dispossessed Palestinians and has been committing genocide for 76 years. And so when I talk about Palestinian liberation, I also think it's important to be, calling out Zionism and revealing it to be what it is, which is a 120-year-old political ideology that is not at all the same as Judaism. So I think that the way in which Zionism has been normalized in the US makes it seem as though it's a cultural project that's about loving Israel and how beautiful Israel is and how nice it is to have a Jewish state without addressing the fact that it is because of Zionism that most of us have been watching the most horrific violence imaginable live streamed to us for over a year by Palestinians who are being annihilated in Gaza and now the West Bank and now also the Lebanese folks in Lebanon who are, and everybody else in Lebanon who's experiencing ethnic cleansing. And so when I reposted that Instagram post, which interestingly was only the first half of it, I think that
Oh, okay.
the second half is even more clarifying, right? I
Yeah.
wish it had been the whole thing. Um, I was thinking about the fact that we live in a country that is very committed to this idea of both sides, as though two equal parties are coming to a conflict that is evacuated of power. And my job as a person, as an anthropologist, as a professor, as a writer, is to find the power in the story and reveal it to be such, which is this is not a conflict. This is not a both sides story. This is actually a settler colonial state annihilating a colonized and occupied territory and population.